Going about our daily routines, every one of us lives as a singular existence. We all have experiences that are unique to us, making special memories with each passing moment. Motivations, interests, and a variety of other factors determine the path that our life takes. As we carry on this way, a lot of us tend to forget about our surroundings. The air we breathe, the grass we walk on, and everything down to the smallest microorganism is alive in some way. Other animals share the same land, doing whatever they can to get by. Even creatures we may deem harmful or dangerous want to be allowed their existence. The planet itself keeps us all sustained, hoping for a symbiotic relationship in return. With all of this in mind, do we take life for granted? Welcome to Mushishi. Mushishi is a manga series by the very talented Yuki Urushibara, running from late 1999 to mid-2008. It went on to get various anime adaptations, covering all 50 chapters from the original work, with one exception being anime exclusive. Every installment is episodic in nature, outside of a few two-part entries. Roughly taking place between the Edo and Meiji periods respectively, Mushishi depicts Japan during a much simpler time. Characters are seen wearing traditional clothing, mostly living together in small communities. Using this simplicity as a backdrop makes the appearance of strange creatures all the more impactful. The beings in question are known to some as Mushi. With humans living as the least abstract forms of life, Mushi are far closer to the source of life itself, existing in a much more cryptic state. No matter where you go, these ubiquitous creatures will always be around. Everyone has the potential to see them, but without the right conditions, it's an ability that never gets awakened. Despite having a pure life essence, they have no sense of individuality, following the light wherever it may be. Able to exist outside of that darkness, the Mushi take many different forms, simply trying to survive. The creatures get a chance to come into being after emerging from the water of life, known as Koki. Shining brightly in a world of emptiness, it's where Mushi themselves are born from. This bright vein also dictates how prosperous certain areas will be. With the light flow causing this extreme fertility, masters are born to control and connect everything in these locations. While the ones in charge are usually animals, there are rare cases of them also being humans. These masters are expected to uphold the so-called rule of life, keeping various factors in balance. The ones that issue commands to these masters are a special group of Mushi that have seemingly gone beyond their average roots. With all of these aspects in place, the world building of Mushishi is quite expansive. Regardless of the basic setting, the surroundings are quite vivid. This isn't just because of the art, but thanks to the concepts that immediately broaden your horizons. The series is somewhat philosophical in its execution, showing how small our own existence is, while reminding us that we're still a part of something bigger. Most of the people in the series live alongside Mushi without ever knowing about them. On the other hand, a select few are very much aware. Some individuals are tasked with keeping records on the many stories related to the creatures. Others are required to tirelessly find a way to remove certain iterations of the beings from existence. One group in particular makes their living by knowing as much as possible about Mushi. This is where the main character Ginko comes into play. Wandering the land as a Mushishi, he constantly studies different kinds of Mushi, even teaching others in certain situations. However, his main job is helping people dealing with Mushi-related problems. While the creatures aren't exactly malicious, their way of life can occasionally cause strange side effects in humans. Sometimes, the solution to an issue is relatively simple, but other times, nothing is known about particular afflictions. Ginko himself is someone especially familiar with this concept, as he's unable to stay in one place for very long. His existence is enough to draw Mushi towards him in great numbers, and as it stands, there's no way to prevent it from happening. Regardless, Ginko enjoys visiting different areas, so the profession he's chosen is perfect for him. The man is also very laid back, sympathizing with both people and Mushi. Doing what he can to be fair to each party, the man fully recognizes the value of life. It's during his travels that he sees an interesting extension of this. Hearing a rumor regarding an island where people are born again, Ginko takes a boat to investigate. Being told by a local about a special spot in the nearby water, it's learned that people who lose their lives there come back from the dead. The woman experienced this firsthand, as she lost her mother to an incurable disease. They could get her back, but the requirement was for the woman to sink to the bottom of the cove while still alive. Having lost 2 family members now, the daughter made the decision to become the mother of the reincarnation. During the full moon, strange grains rose to the surface of the water. By taking one into her body, the woman became pregnant within the month, leading to the rebirth of her late mother. Ginko wonders if her late husband couldn't have been the cause, but the time frames aren't even close. With the young girl's mannerisms being eerily similar to her past self, the woman has a difficult time accepting the child as her daughter. It seems a number of people have been reborn in similar ways, being happy despite the odd circumstances of how they came to be. Ginko attempts to check the area for clues, but doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Waiting for the next full moon, he now witnesses countless grains coming from the same spot. Cutting one open for examination, the man finally understands what's going on. Finding embryos inside of the special grains, it seems that a Mushi is able to take a living human and revert them back to their initial state of existence. While they may physically resemble their former selves, each reborn person is their own unique being. Ginko is conflicted about this bizarre phenomenon that recycles life, but doesn't want to get involved, as he feels it isn't his place to say what should or shouldn't be done. Intending to leave the next day, Ginko is forced to remain in the village, as a storm is approaching fast. That night, the mother is again reminded of the past as her daughter brings up an old trick for falling asleep. Feeling uneasy, the woman retreats outside to regain herself. She then notices that one of the boats has been left out near the ocean. Fearing that it'll get washed away, she tries to retrieve it, but instead gets pulled into the water. Being gone for a while, the villagers search frantically for the missing woman, eventually spotting her floating above the rebirth spot. Ginko and the daughter take another boat, arriving just in time to see the mother being pulled into the cave by the Mushi. The young girl dives in after them, managing to loosen the creature's grip to get them both above water. Unfortunately, it hasn't given up, pulling the daughter back, as well as Ginko, who tried to save her. The situation is dire, with no means of escape as the two get dragged down deeper and deeper. Expecting the worst, Ginko is surprised when the Mushi lets them go. Somehow, the moon was able to break through the storm, causing the creature to retreat back to its cave. With everyone alright after the incident, Ginko confirms the findings of his research. Ready to leave the island, he knows that the villagers will be alright maintaining their lifestyle. With living and dying both accounted for, a potential utopia may very well exist on the little island. This encounter managed to work out for these people, but I wonder how many of us would choose to do the same thing. The ability to bring back loved ones to some degree is quite remarkable, but is it really worth it? While no one is in any place to judge the villagers' actions, something about the situation just doesn't feel right. You could potentially say that this symbiotic relationship is beneficial to both parties. The embryos released aren't necessarily done out of sympathy, being the result of consuming a meal. Rather than allowing their loved ones to be laid to rest, they're instead sacrificed out of personal interest. On the surface, it's a comfortable method for keeping sadness away, but underneath, it's a band-aid solution used to cope. Refusing to deal with the situation might only serve to cheapen someone else's existence. The finite nature of life is what makes it truly worthwhile. A special person could be reborn 1,000 times, but they would never be the same as before. Constantly cheating death would never make it possible to appreciate life. On the other hand, would a stolen life be better than death? In another location, a recently married woman headed through what seemed to be an ordinary forest. Coming near a certain area, she found that a mold-like substance had started to gather on her clothes. Seemingly inconsequential, she continued with her life as normal until her firstborn child began showing similar markings. Losing strength every day, the parents are hoping that the Mushishi has a remedy for this sickness. Inquiring about the original state of the newborn, he's met with a strange response. After being in labor, it wasn't a baby that emerged, but an odd slime-like creature. Quickly retreating out of the house, it went underneath the structure, vanishing from sight. Understandably, the woman was left distraught at being unable to have kids. Following these events, a child was discovered in the same location 1 year later. Assuming the slime had grown into a regular form, the mother is convinced that it's their baby, but the husband has his reservations. The child grew much quicker than usual, but for some reason, his cognitive ability didn't follow suit. With his appearance becoming more similar to the parents, it didn't take long before they put reason to the side. On a different night, the husband went outside to get rid of a loud cat, only to be met with something he couldn't have predicted. Another baby was waiting underneath the house, accepted by the mother with open arms. An odd routine had started, with their son being reborn every 6 months. The husband dug around the underside of their home, only to find that nothing was out of the ordinary. Back in the present, their firstborn child barely has energy to function, covered with strange green marks. Ginkgo tells the parents that there's no helping this condition. He goes on to describe a mushi that matches their earlier description of the spore-like presence, with the goal of infiltrating the eggs of pregnant women. After they leave, a hitotake is left to be discovered, otherwise known as a human mushroom. Checking under the house, Ginkgo verifies the situation, surprised at how big the creature has gotten. With threads connecting the hitotake to the host mushi, the sole objective of the children is to send back nutrients. Ginkgo then advises the parents to kill off the oldest son before he has the chance to spread toxic seeds. As the mother objects violently to this idea, she's fed a harsh reminder about the being they're dealing with and the theft it committed. Euthanizing the eldest hitotake, the Mushishi offers a quiet apology. Outside, the husband wants Ginkgo to let them raise the rest of the children for his wife's sake, willing to take responsibility by putting them down when they get weak. With a lifespan of up to 3 decades, the Mushi could cause the suffering to continue for quite some time. Regardless, the man is still willing to deal with it. He mentions how his wife used to be together with an important figure, but was divorced after their child died in an unfortunate accident. Worried for her sanity, the husband wants to do what he can for his wife. Willing to let things slide for now, Ginkgo tells the man that he'll be back in 3 months to check up on them. Receiving a letter before the full time is passed, it seems the parents are finally ready to deal with the situation. At least, that's how the husband feels, but his partner has something else in mind. The wife welcomes Ginkgo, but once he turns away, she rushes the man and stabs him with a knife. After being patched up by the husband, the man tells Ginkgo that the children have become more advanced. Aside from the kids sharing information with each other, they also began to develop their speech more. Once the second child transitioned into its weakened state, it began using falsified emotions to garner sympathy from the parents. They also used this tactic more recently to manipulate the wife into attacking the Mushishi. With the creatures becoming gradually more intelligent, Ginkgo sees what a dangerous problem this has turned into. Recovering for another night, the Mushishi is now ready to eliminate the second child, as well as deal with the others. The hitotake tries the same reasoning with Ginkgo, but the man doesn't fall for it. This triggers the others to set fire to the house, with Ginkgo's injury part of the plan to keep him from interfering. The kids read his research about themselves, giving them the last bit of information they needed to survive. The wife rushes in to save her kids, only to see them vanish in the flames. Safe from the fire, Ginkgo informs the two that the hitotake are now lying dormant inside of a seed pod, giving it to them to watch over. Telling them there's no way of knowing when they'll awaken again, the Mushishi takes his leave. Further away now, it's discovered that Ginkgo is holding onto the strange Mushi, with the parents actually watching over a harmless crystal. Confused by their continued existence, Ginkgo still values their life, even now. This scenario shows an exceptionally strong desperation to live, going as far as overriding another's existence. The mother, very much desiring her own new life to raise, ended up being a perfect match. It's hard to see this Mushi as anything other than a nuisance, but at the same time, taking another's essence is the only way for it to live. This cruel fate is further driven in as Ginkgo mentions humans being more capable of protecting themselves. Hearing this, it's understandable that they would turn to self-defense as a last resort. Going further, is it unreasonable to call anything evil when it has no other means of survival? Conversely, can something be innocent by simply accepting the path laid out for it? It may be impossible to make that call in regards to a life that never came to be. However, is it possible to weigh the difference between a lack of existence and too much of it? On a particularly rainy day, a small family hears a visitor knocking on their door. Allowing a certain Mushishi inside to avoid the storm, he's willing to repay their kindness with help in the form of remedies. Appreciating the offer, the husband remarks that they're all quite healthy, aside from the general difficulties of life. He instead asks to hear some interesting stories, with Ginkgo obliging him until the rain moves on. A bit saddened by his ordinary days, the Mushishi assures him that it's not a bad way to live. Leaving soon after, the man is left to continue his average routine. A number of years quickly pass by, with the husband gradually moving into old age. On the way home after a long day, the man heads through the forest to meet his wife. Suddenly, a scent of flowers wafts through the air, stopping him as he gets a sense of déjà vu. Looking over, he notices a cave being the source of the sweet scent. Assuming the tunnel will get him home faster, the man heads deep inside. A forgotten memory nags at the back of his head, leading him to recall his time as a young boy. After his family is forced to move due to work complications, the young man gets used to working out in the fields. Coming across some trees with cherry blossoms, he meets a girl trying to reach the branches. Helping her out, he gets the feeling that he's forgetting something, but decides to drop it for the time being. The two get closer over the years, leading to their eventual marriage. Time marches on, with the husband enjoying his quiet life. On a particularly rainy day, the small family hears a visitor knocking on their door. Allowing a certain Mushishi inside to avoid the storm, he's willing to repay their kindness with help in the form of remedies. Appreciating the offer, the husband remarks that they're all quite healthy, aside from the general difficulties of life. He instead asks to hear some interesting stories, with Ginkgo obliging him until the rain moves on. A bit saddened by his ordinary days, the man is left to continue his average routine. Marriage. He notices a cave, déjà vu. He notices a cave, moving into old age. Recall his time as a young boy, déjà vu. The man heads through the forest to meet his wife. It's the feeling that he's forgetting something, déjà vu. He notices a cave. On a particularly rainy day, a small family hears a visitor knocking on their door. Allowing the Mushishi inside to avoid the storm, he's willing to repay their kindness with help in the form of remedies. The husband declines the offer, but seems like he has something on his mind. Waiting until the rest of the family goes to sleep, the man mentions that he's had a lot of moments that feel overly familiar, despite experiencing them for the first time. Getting a reaction from asking about a flowery scent, Ginkgo knows that he's onto something. Mentioning a tube-like mushi, the man learns that he may be stuck living his life over and over. Telling him to stay away from dark places with a specific smell, Ginkgo warns the man that he may get consumed by the mushi after too many loops. The days carry on, eventually bringing the older man to the same cave. This time, however, he avoids it, wanting to move forward into the future. Thanks to this, he's finally able to continue his life the way it should be lived. The husband resumes his usual activities, bringing his wife into the mountain one afternoon to look for food. Losing track of her after a while, the man searches for his missing partner. It doesn't take long before he makes a terrible discovery. Carrying the woman on his back, the husband is desperate to get her medical attention. Suddenly, the man realizes that he's unintentionally returned to the Mushi cave. Despite the previous advice, he knows he doesn't have much time left to save his wife. Faced with his only option, the husband enters the tunnel. Life loops back the exact same way as before, except that now, everything is being experienced through the woman's point of view. Time continues to pass, and on a particularly rainy day, a wandering Mushishi asks for shelter from the storm. This story is an especially harrowing experience in various ways. It reminds me a great deal of Haruhi Suzumiya's Endless 8 arc, with the club being trapped in the same summer vacation loop without ever realizing. Even though you're still technically alive in this state, your existence is essentially frozen. There's potentially no way out, aside from a nagging feeling that makes you more uneasy with additional repeats. Without a doubt, it's still your life, but your sense of being has been stolen. It's also debatable if bringing the wife into the tunnel was the right thing to do. Given the previous points, the husband has now placed the same curse onto her. While the man may have wanted to help her, he was told by Ginkgo that repetition is unlikely to yield a more positive result. Not to mention, the original husband may no longer exist, finally consumed by the strange Mushi. The wife may be able to live, but she very well could be trapped with illusions. With these things in mind, it begs the question, is too much life worse than no life at all? These three scenarios are just a small piece of what Mushishi as a series has to offer. While the folktales are generally slower paced, they never come across as being dragged out. Just enough information is presented, leaving plenty up to the viewer's own speculation. All of the stories show the dichotomy between humans, Mushi, and nature in general. At the same time, the similarities are also apparent. No creature necessarily wants to be harmful. However, we can only live by what dictates our survival. All of us simply want to be allowed to live. Making a terrible mistake in his adolescence, Ginkgo learns this valuable lesson from an older Mushishi. No matter what, everything around us should be allowed to exist. The world in its entirety is our place of residence. This marks a noteworthy point for the young Ginkgo, thinking deeply on the man's words. Barely escaping from another Mushi he previously encountered, the price of the boy's freedom was steep, losing his past and his identity. Remembering advice from someone he stayed with before, he gave himself a new name in order to move forward. However, the name he used to regain his existence was shared by another Mushi, becoming his light within the darkness. This yin and yang relationship between these beings shows him that everything is connected in some way or another. Every creature has an unwritten list of rules by which they exist. Collectively, we desire life. In that light, maybe the simple act of living is enough.